High-rise buildings have enabled large communities of people to work together. The views are great, but it's the prospect of an emergency situation that requires a specific and well-thought-out plan of action. There are a number of emergency situations that could arise at any time. Now, the chances are that many of us will never experience them, but it's a fact that familiarisation with the correct procedures saves lives. Every building must have a tried and tested evacuation plan. You must know what to do if you're the one who first notices the emergency, and you must also know what to do when the warning is raised. Everyone must know the right procedure, and your calm cooperation during an emergency evacuation will reduce the possibility of personal injuries. There are positive steps you should take to prepare yourself for such an emergency. Get to know your work environment. Find out the location of emergency exits, firefighting equipment, fire alarms, and means of communication. Know what to do when an emergency is detected. Familiarise yourself with the procedures in your building. Know what you're required to do during an evacuation. Ensure that your building has a well-rehearsed emergency plan. Know the role of fire wardens and acknowledge their authority. Know where the assembly point on your floor is located. Know which stairway you'll be using and be prepared to change to another exit if it's necessary. Know where to assemble when you've reached the ground floor. Fire, chemical spill, gas leak or bomb threat are typical of the emergency situations that could occur and may require the immediate evacuation of your building. When any of these emergencies arise, there's specific action you should take if you're the first to notice the problem. On every floor of your building there should be standard orders posted that will explain the evacuation procedures and give the names and telephone numbers of the evacuation wardens. Familiarise yourself with these names and phone numbers. When you're reporting an emergency, make sure that your report is clear and precise, and state the nature of the emergency and its location.
Hello, fire brigade.
Familiarise yourself with the firefighting equipment on your floor, and know where the fire alarm is situated. In event of receiving a bomb threat telephone call, you should try to ascertain important facts. Ask the caller questions such as, when's the bomb going to explode? Where did you put the bomb? When did you put it there? What does the bomb look like? What kind of bomb is it? Listen for noises and anything that may help to identify the caller or the location from which the call has been made. In the event of detecting a gas leak, chemical spill, smoke hazard, fire, or any life-threatening situation, you should follow the standard procedures that should be posted on notice boards in your workplace. You should raise the alarm by activating the nearest break glass alarm. Then tell other people who will be in danger. Tell the floor warden, and then notify the switchboard operator and ask that the fire brigade be notified by telephone. If you are trained in the use of firefighting equipment, you may fight the fire if it's possible and safe to do so. To help retard the spread of fire and smoke, close doors and windows. The floor warden should ensure that all personnel on your floor are accounted for and ask everyone to prepare for evacuation. Then you should assemble at the designated evacuation point if it's a safe distance from the fire and await the instruction from the floor warden to evacuate. It's important to keep calm throughout any emergency, as highly emotional behaviour will only spread irrational behaviour amongst others. An orderly descent on the stairs is important, linking arms while descending, and when you reach the ground floor, you should move to the predetermined assembly point and await further instructions from the warden. If you're working on a floor that's separate from the emergency situation, then the first you're likely to hear about it is the audible warning alarm system. You should make yourself aware of this alarm and the meaning of the various tones. You usually have this opportunity during the weekly test of the system, which should be carried out by your chief warden. When you hear the alarm, you must be ready to respond should evacuation be ordered. Evacuation procedure is designed to be as straightforward as possible. You'll be asked to assemble at the predetermined point on your floor, which is usually located near the fire stairs that you'll use to evacuate the building. The floor warden will receive instruction from the master emergency communication point, and you must only leave the floor when you're instructed to do so, in order to avoid unnecessary congestion and irrational behaviour on the stairway. Evacuation normally commences at the floor affected, then the 2 floors above, then the floor below. The remaining floors are evacuated in ascending and descending order, respectively. Once you've descended the stairs, you must move away from the building to a nominated assembly point. It should be well clear of the building so as to not obstruct firefighting operations and provide protection for evacuees. The successful and efficient evacuation of your building relies on the pre-planning and testing of that plan. It's important that the evacuation drill be practiced to ensure that the evacuation plan for your building is the best possible plan and that all personnel can familiarise themselves with the procedure. Wardens must be appointed and trained in all aspects of their role. Backup wardens must be briefed in the same way in event of the absence of the warden. Communication systems must be put in place. An audible warning system is a basic requirement. A master emergency communication point must be established on the ground floor. Records must be kept about the movement of people being evacuated and the order in which they've been evacuated. Runners must be appointed as part of the communication system in event of the failure of other electronic communications. Signs should be placed in lift foyers to prevent the use of elevators in event of fire. A specific plan must be put into place to evacuate mobility impaired people. An effective evacuation is managed by a team of people who know their own role and responsibilities and who can engender confidence in the people who are to be evacuated. Human behaviour in emergency situations can often be irrational, so it's important that evacuation wardens act with confidence and authority. The emergency control team is committed to the preservation of life and the reduction of the incidence of injury. The evacuation team is made up of the chief warden, deputy chief wardens, floor wardens, stair wardens and runners. Each has a specific role. Each wears colour-coded hard hats for easy identification. White is for house wardens and deputy house wardens. Yellow is for floor wardens, and red indicates wardens, runners and first aiders. The helmet system, as a means of identification, is important to the people being evacuated and to site reporting when the evacuees reach the ground floor. The floor wardens must ensure that all personnel assemble at the designated point on their floor. A physical check must be made of all work and recreation areas. It's possible that someone in a storeroom or toilet may not be aware of the emergency. It's not uncommon for people to hide in these areas as a result of their fear. Floor wardens must communicate with the master emergency communication point, responding at first to the audible warning system and then notifying control when all personnel are accounted for and the evacuation can commence. It's important that the evacuation of each floor proceed as instructed by the chief warden. In a multi-storey building, the carefully orchestrated evacuation and use of stairways will avoid congestion and turmoil. It's also important that control, knowing where the fire is located, is able to order the evacuation of the people who are in greatest danger. Stair wardens are placed ahead of the evacuees to set the pace for the descent. Excessive speed will lead to injury and irrational behaviour, and stair wardens placed behind will also look after stragglers. Runners may be required to move from master emergency communication point to any floor, and evacuees should ensure that they're given right of way. The master emergency communication point, that's usually manned by the Chief and Deputy Chief Wardens, has the responsibility for orchestrating the evacuation in the safest possible way and to account for all personnel. The Chief Warden or the Deputy must brief the emergency services when they arrive on the scene. All personnel have a role to play in an evacuation. Your cooperation with the orders given and your calm will ensure not only your safety but also the safety of others. Careful planning of evacuation procedures in anticipation of an emergency will save lives. Every occupant of a building should be familiar with the plan and acquainted with the safety features of the building. The evacuation of your building will be effective only when every person knows the procedure and their